hour with you guys. We're going to look at specific passages in Scripture, kind of picking it apart as groups and seeing what we can learn and seeing what we can learn, pick out, and then apply to our own lives. I think that's one of the biggest things in a learning context is learning and then going out and applying it to our situation and context. So before we begin, I just want to go over some learning tasks, some goals for our time together. I want you, my fellow learners, to be able to apply the examples, like I said, of servant leadership from Scripture to your own lives. And then an objective that I have for this time is to create a safe learning environment where learners respect one another and fully engage in the material. Assignments and discussions require a great deal of teamwork to accomplish, and learners will seek accountability from fellow classmates and myself if needed. So there's going to be quite a bit of time in groups, which I'm excited about. I'm excited to hear your opinions and thoughts. I'm going to be walking around all throughout this time together and giving my input as much as I can, and just knowing more about you guys and what you guys think about servant leadership. So here we go. Before I show this video, though, this is about Rick Warren. He's talking about this idea of stop leading and start serving. He's one of the great Christian leaders in our time today. He's a pastor of Saddleback Church, pastors thousands of people. It's easy for a guy like that to build up his ego, but it seems like, I don't know him personally, but it seems like he has a great idea of serving, and that's how you lead. But before we get into this, I just want to get your thoughts of the word servant. What comes to mind? Is it humility? Is it kindness? What comes to mind? Just throw a couple words out, just kind of get our brains going a little bit. So what comes to mind when the word servant is thrown out?
Doing things for others.
Great.
Acts of kindness.
Awesome.
Serve.
Serve. Thank you. That's great. Anything else?
I think humility. You said it.
Yeah, that's a big one, I think. So again, this is about a 2-minute video. It should kind of prep our time together. It's a really interesting video, so I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
I heard you at Exponential West. I was just passing through to talk to somebody at the soundboard, and you said one thing. You said there's 100 conferences about leadership. There's not very many conferences about being a servant.
That's right.
Tell me.
And the same is true for books. For every one book you can find on being a servant, you can find 100 to 200 books on being a leader. Everybody wants to be a leader. Nobody wants to be a servant. And yet Jesus didn't talk about leadership. He talked about servanthood. In fact, he said, if you want to be great, learn to be the servant of all. And even today, when people say, well, I want to be a servant leader. Well, why? Why not just be a servant? Okay? Don't even worry about being a leader. If you go and serve, you will be a leader. The greatest leader who ever lived was Jesus. And the reason he was the greatest leader who ever lived is because he was the greatest servant. He said, I came to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. Those two words, serve and give, define the Christian life. And I am afraid that a lot of people who are interested in leadership are actually not interested so much in leadership as much as they're interested in praise. They're interested in ego. They're interested in fame. And those are all the wrong reasons. And I tell people, don't worry about being a leader. Don't worry about it. I haven't ever worried about being a leader. I worry about being a servant. And the greater I serve, the more influence I have. I call it the Mother Teresa syndrome. Mother Teresa took the least influential people in life, the dying of Calcutta. I'm not even talking about sick. These people were dying and there's no way they were going to get well. And the purpose of her home for the dying was not to help heal them. It was literally to just let them die with dignity and make sure that they were loved. And here was this little woman taking the least influential people, and yet it gave her such moral credibility, she could walk into Congress and they would listen to her. And this is, the way up is down. And so focus not on being a leader, focus on being a servant. And God will make sure that you have influence.
All right, learn awesome video to kind of set the stage for our time tonight. And something that is interesting that I want to point out is, maybe you can discuss this in the group, is the way up is down. And kind of discuss that a little bit in regards to servant leadership. And I mean, just discuss your thoughts in general about the video, but I would love to kind of hear your thoughts about the way up is down and what that looks like in our context today. So go ahead and discuss, and we'll be walking around. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was something.
Yeah.
So the very last statement of him saying,
Just have to serve and not lead.
you know, and you need to focus on serving, and then God will allow you to have
And a common
influence.
energy this.
Like so.
Love it.
Serve.
Did you write
And
that?
then publicity
Oh my
came.
God.
Like
Yeah, so
just
it's kinda like
expanding
if
your
you
sphere of
genuinely serve,
influence simply by
then
serving.
that
Yeah.
naturally come.
I
You
feel
don't
like
see jobs.
I can
Yeah.
totally
like he
see
was
that too,
Mother
like
Teresa
in
goes into Congress.
like
and
friends that I have
it
that I
was-
Yeah.
find like that I
why?
really like.
Just because she's
They'll
genuinely
do
serves and
things
genuinely
in
sacrifices.
secret
Mhm.
that I
She
find
doesn't
out
seek
about later
Yeah.
or something, and that
She
is
goes in
a
a
good
place
act or
where
something.
she
And that's
can
something that
listen
I
to
see them
her.
as a leader
Huh.
because
I think that
they're
the
like
same
keeping
lines,
that to
let's-
themselves, and
let's
that's
speak
like a
on
perfect
Teresa.
example of like servant
It
leader.
makes sense why people why
Yeah, definitely. I
servant
think,
becomes a leader,
you
because
know, being humble and
you
God
don't-
will exalt you
people
where you need
trust
to
you,
be,
people trust
not
what you
where
want
you
to do
think
as
you
a
should
leader,
be,
because
you know,
that it's
and
not,
I think
you're not
people, like you
seeking,
said, you know, they want to be
self-reward,
praised, they
right?
want to
Because
have all the
everyone
high
looks at
credits and
her
everything,
vision.
but,
she
you
does
know,
this, she makes
God
she
might not want
thinks
that
this
for
is
you,
right,
and it's not
this is
good,
the
it might not be good for you, you know, it might be, you know, you're going to have something later that's better for you.
Everybody watches.
Right.
The politician
I just
watches.
think
What's he
Lord,
doing?
like humility and humbleness, just keep coming back and kind of resounding
And
through the
being
message.
a servant, you
What
are
was the line
trust
again?
and
That you were doing?
God will make it so you can be an
just
influence,
trust
so
somebody that doesn't show
you
self.
serve and you like stoop low and
a
God
servant is
will bring you
out for the
to
individual.
the
I
know,
know, so like
It's like-
the way
Yeah.
up is down, so Mother Teresa and
She
Jesus,
works with people who
they-
are just dying.
they did what society
She's able to
believed
influence
was a sign
Yeah,
of
that's
weakness
Yeah, that's a
or
voice.
something
Yeah.
like that, but
Oh my gosh.
wherever they
Yeah.
went,
Powerful
people
voice.
followed.
Even when I
and
watched
they listened,
that documentary,
and so it's
was
almost
wondering,
an
I was like,
ironic way to
wait,
look at it,
didn't she
because
like
no one
heal people or do
feels
like
like they
healings or
should
something? And
have
but
to
I was
do
like,
that,
no, she literally
but that's
just brought them in to die.
as humans
Yeah,
we
like,
almost kind of
how
lean
significant,
towards,
like
because
how
it's shape of
interesting.
dignity.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So
And I don't know, when I think of leadership, I think of management, I think of
Well,
you're
I
in
even
charge,
think
make
about
the
Rick
decisions.
Warren and like his
There's a
impact
Jesus difference.
Look
in
for
the leadership
Jesus
world,
and other
you
pieces.
know, even outside of the church, but like he even has the ear of the government, you know, and
Yeah, this is,
you know,
this is
asking
the
for
right way
his
to do it, because I'm not telling you what to do,
expertise
but,
and this,
and you're a great leader
you
because
know,
you lead
area,
with
so.
such, you lead with such
Interesting.
example.
Yeah.
Right? That people are
Oh,
gonna
she's not very good focus on
right?
you know, being a servant.
oh, I know, I said that too in the beginning.
But yeah, like I
Why
said,
do
there are
we
so many conferences on
just wanna follow
leadership,
people
but not
who
on
serve
being a
and
servant.
Yeah.
What is that?
And that's
like?
almost a strange thing to go to a conference to, like,
Yeah.
How would
a
that help
servant
you become-
conference. It
Yeah.
even sounds weird.
Because like when he said like, you know,
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
one word description, what do you think
Yeah.
serving, you know, like I want to say like,
Maybe
buzzard,
somebody
you know,
can
like
get it.
Huh?
Jesus.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
think it was
Yeah.
service.
Service.
Yeah.
Never thinking of it like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, he was all man, right?
it comes to mind.
But
Mhm.
you wonder, like,
It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad,
he also
it sets a
had
tone. I
personality.
mean,
God,
what was that
really
movie
was
called?
all-
The
It
Butler?
makes it
Right.
Oh,
so
that's
clear.
Oh,
that
fully
God,
understand it,
and
fully
you
understand it.
exactly, you fully understand who God is.
Okay, we need
Yeah,
to
so
educate
Right.
you.
I bought that movie,
Yeah.
so we'll be watching that soon.
All right, so let's bring it back. Great thoughts from this group, especially over here. And I would love to hear just what your guys' thoughts of what you guys talked about. And just one person from each group, that'd be great. Just something short, doesn't have to be long, but just kind of take away from the video would be awesome.
Well, we talked about, just like Cody brought up a good example of all the bosses that he had. The best ones were ones that worked with him, that worked for him, and they didn't delegate, because delegation is not true leadership.
Right.
And then we just kind of talked about how people kind of flock to people who serve, and Warren was talking about take out leadership and just serve, and then how do we as humans just have the correct heart to serve and not look for that praise? And then how do humans like flock to people who just serve? And it's just an interesting dynamic of thinking about Mother Teresa's story and Jesus' story, just how they just genuinely served, and then people came to them. You know?
It's great. Thank you. What do you guys back there?
We definitely talked about, you know, the Mother Teresa aspect and how, you know, she humbled herself to not only help those who are sick, but those who are dying that aren't even gonna make it, you know.
Right.
She just wanted to make sure that they had, you know, an elegant death and like, you know, a respectful death. And, you know, even we think that's such a low or like a dirty job even that, you know, but she lowered herself to it. And, you know, God brought her to a point of influence, to the point where even Congress, you know, listened to what she had to say, even though she's just somebody from, you know, from really nowhere, you know. And it's just, it's crazy to see how, you know, you humble yourself and God will exalt you where you need to be, you know.
That's a good point.
So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just that whole Mother Teresa example, and I mean, whatever context that we come from, whether that's, you know, facilities management, sports, athletic training, whatever circumstance we come from, it's like, it's a great reminder to just serve people, care on people. And so we're going to talk about that more as we progress. But thank you guys for your thoughts, and it was a great discussion. So as we get into just kind of a little more background about servant leadership, here's one definition from actually the man himself, the guy who coined this term of servant leadership. He's written tons of books, Robert K. Greenleaf, but he said in The Servant as a Leader, he said, the servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. So again, similarly to Rick Warren's video, I want you guys to just discuss what it means to serve first. And we have all these deadlines, we have all these tasks in front of us as people, as in careers, but how do we get a mindset and perspective to serve first, to serve people first, value people first? And so just a couple minutes with your groups again. I'll be walking around. Go ahead.
Well, I think it comes from a good leader, someone that doesn't really
this
care
is
about
like
the purpose of what they're doing.
The servant leader is like the student athlete, you know. We look at it as, oh, well, they're an athlete, you know, they're an athlete. Well, you gotta remember, it all starts with, you know, being a servant first, being a student first. You don't excel in the classroom, you don't do it on the field. You know, you don't excel at being a student, a servant, you can't be a leader, you know. And, you know, to go hand in hand with that is,
Well, I think it's
you know,
similar
how
to,
can you lead if you've never been
if you
on the
are
bottom
looking at
and help
the
those, you know, in a leadership
before
position?
your
How
own
do you
interests,
understand, how do you know
then
what
people will realize
do,
that
how to
you're
operate
not
things, you know.
selfish and you do
Yeah.
care about them, and so
I think
they'll
you have
want
to take
be around
yourself
you
out of
and,
the equation,
you know,
and you have to
like
look
be your
at
friend, and I think that's
putting
where
yourself
you
in
begin
someone
to
else's
almost get
position.
followers, or people
And,
flock to you because people want to
um,
be around you.
I mean, no matter what
Yeah.
job you're
Because
in
no
or
one-
whatever,
I feel like
whether
no one wants to
you're
be around a
the
selfish
boss
person.
or you're bottom of the
That-
totem pole, I think
You think her.
just kind of putting
Interesting that
yourself
natural feeling
in
is what I'm getting at.
someone else's shoes puts everything
It
else
comes
back in
back to
perspective.
the cycle of
Well, I mean, it's
being
hard in a
right example.
society that is
And
so
Jesus is the
selfish
first
and
Yeah.
really realistic, and
I was a first
and
was
to put
inspired
other
to be
people
servant leader
before yourself.
because I
It's
saw
service.
someone
But
else.
how, I mean, how do we, as Christians, as followers of
Service
Christ, how
first
do
is the
we
thing that's hard
position
to
ourselves to do that
It
first?
comes from
And
seeing
that's,
someone who
I
does
mean,
that.
Yeah.
being surrounded by
Joel's
community,
kinda wondering,
people that encourage
what does it
us
mean
to that
The
goal.
answer is to
So I think that's huge,
because
but
you see someone
it's a
else do it
struggle.
and you
You know,
see
it's a struggle, everyday struggle of, like you're saying, I'm gonna wake up and regardless of the situation that I'm in, regardless of the
But
circumstance,
you're probably a good leader now.
I'm gonna try my
Someone
best to
that
put myself in that person's shoes and to serve
is the
them,
example that inspired
to
you.
listen to their needs.
Yes, once you have a
Yeah.
shot. Once
I
you
just
have
think
lost
like
your
realizing
inspiration,
how much
your
God
leadership
has
style is
served
largely
you
coming from perspective.
Yeah.
makes
Utterly
you
different.
realize how
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
you need to reflect
You definitely take
his
it forward.
attitude and the way that
From what you've seen.
what
so
he's done for you should like
It's
lead
just that
you to
leading by
serve
example.
others as
Yeah.
well. And
Prime example.
like I'm
Yeah.
thinking about my own
Yeah.
workplace and how
that
you know people will come to you with little
Yeah,
problems
it's natural
and
feeling, right?
it's
So
so
you
easy to
naturally
just be like I'll get back to
you
you,
need to serve.
but
you
really
also
taking the time to
really need to see somebody
know,
serve, and that's what you
take
influence,
that
right? That's where
moment
you
and
can
go and
know.
help them with
Look at how
that
they
issue
serve, right?
is
And maybe it's conscious,
that
it's
takes a
not
lot of
conscious, but you see that
practice
service,
to
and
put
that's what
everything on hold
you
for
see
you
that actual
and then
really
actually
feel somebody
go and
else
help
serving
them, and I think that's
And
something
that's really
we definitely need to work on too.
And definitely, it goes back to, you know, the going the extra mile for someone, you know,
The
you
kid,
pour into theirs,
like-
we're gonna pour back into you, you know,
Yeah.
and,
I think
it's
of that.
not, look at it as like a waterfall effect of just going down and down, you know,
Use the term
it goes almost
Yeah,
like a
it's a
seesaw.
movie.
More stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
Big example.
Yes, he's visual.
All right, let's bring it back. Big group. Thank you guys so much for your thoughts on this. Just one person real quick from each group. Just some quick thoughts on what you guys talked about and this idea of thinking first of service.
Go for it. I'll start it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we were talking about just, putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
And kind of refocusing the perspective. And, someone mentioned being in a society where, it's very selfish and we're very individual, people. And so looking for ways that we can go out of our way, go an extra mile to help someone else.
That's awesome. Thank you. What about this group up front?
Okay, so Kurt actually mentioned that almost that it's a cycle because he mentioned that he was almost stuck on natural feeling. And so we began to discuss that, okay, this lead by example terminology and how when we see people serve, so lead by example, then it almost ignites in us a feeling of, oh, that was a really great example, and this person just was able to get that sort of feeling that that person cared, and then so it's a cycle where you almost follow, and then people will flock to you.
Interesting.
And then I thought of the Pay It Forward, this movie where this child,
Great movie, yeah.
yeah, and so just things like that, like people will follow you once they see all of these things, like if you serve,
Right.
and so that's kind of how our conversation.
It's having the
Yeah,
courage to take that initial step
Yes,
and to
exactly.
be uncomfortable and to go outside of the norms. In that sense,
Exactly.
like how
Our
everybody's
society.
talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So great, thank you guys so much for your thoughts. And so we're gonna dive right into it. Matthew 23, 1 through 12. This is one of the most famous examples on servant leadership, but Jesus' example of, like I said before, is one of the best examples. And so we're gonna kind of dive in. If I could get one of you guys per paragraph here to kind of read it out, I think that would help just to for us to focus and kind of, as you're thinking, just dissecting, what it means. There's a line at the bottom, I'm sure you guys have heard it, but the greatest among you will be your servant. And just that dichotomy of the greatest, but you're serving. And in this world, it's like the greatest are those who perform, are those who achieve and get the bonus. Those are the greatest in this world. But Jesus is saying the greatest among you will be your servant. So just be thinking that as we're reading this out loud, and we're going to discuss that a little bit at the end when we finish. So can I get a volunteer to read the first paragraph?
All right.
Thank you.
Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do. For they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them."
Awesome. Thank you.
Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide
That's great.
and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others.
Awesome. Thank you. One more. Thank you.
But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And you do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
Awesome. Thank you. There's the beginning, this just stuck out to me right away, but as we're discussing here, the first line of the second paragraph, everything they do is done for people to see. And just the idea of servant leadership is people are not going to normally recognize you. And are we okay with that? Are we okay with this idea of servant leadership and not being recognized? So let's discuss that, and then just the idea of the greatest among you will be your servant. So give about 5 minutes there, and then we'll come back. Thank you.
Well, when it says, it's like Joe pointed out, the greatest among you will be your servant. You know, I think that's up to our definition of greatness. You know, is it material things like you talked about, or is it non-material things? You know, what you store up in heaven. You know, because that could be, you know, the greatest, and you have the greatest abundance in heaven, or you know, something like that. So I think the greatest
like
is our
service
because of,
and I'm not saying that I do service in class, for example, I'm the tech guy.
I like what you said
Every day.
first, that was really interesting about your
I really
mom's.
don't do it for
Interview,
free,
that's so crazy.
but it always comes.
Yeah, you never see that.
So it's difficult to
Yeah.
take those two different parts.
I also think about
different.
like what he said about that everything
And
they do is done for
I
people
don't
to
know, just
see
the mindset
and
of 8 through 12.
how
Yeah.
the people who
I
are
think it's
exalted in our
difficult for
society
services.
are,
Yeah.
Almost
they
always,
have
if it's
servants
noticed,
for them.
followed by
So it's like
Yeah.
interesting that they're not
Going on with
servants
that is
themselves,
I
you know,
struggle
but
with
they have other people to be servants
almost
for them. In the
recognition,
literal
and so
sense.
not that I want to be
I think
praised or
it-
like lifted or like
You know, I
look at
think
what
the
she did, but
scripture
if I'm
talks
putting like
about
all this work and
the fruits of
serving
the
this person
Spirit.
by doing something,
And, you know, as we're living
it's almost always nice to
among
feel like
each other,
recognized,
you know,
or
how
like
we
thank you
identify
for
each other.
or
Where
appreciate
the
like thank you for
fruits,
doing something.
mhm,
I don't know if that's
serving,
like different than praise, but
You know, it's not
that's always something that's
for,
hard for me. Just
you know, the
like
praise
doing
and
the
the
act of
limelight.
service and accepting
You know, that doesn't,
this
you can't
might not be
manufacture that.
rewarded by
So
a
true.
You know, it goes back to that
or
natural
like
feeling thing.
recognition.
Yeah,
or
that's
that
so true.
pay.
Yeah.
You can't
And so
just
that's something that like I struggle
manufacture
with.
like,
Also,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
big
serve
thing.
someone today.
God knows
It
our
literally
hearts.
has to be
Yeah, I think
something
it's
where
all
like your
about the
spirit
motives
is just
and
welling up
or
with
behind
wanting
our
to
actions.
Yes.
do something.
I mean, we have to
So
validate
we
grow
ourselves
organically.
Yeah.
and check ourselves periodically. Okay, am I serving because of
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's
I
great.
think just
as
like
we talk about,
in terms of
you know,
like
you see
being
applied to your
recognized,
lives,
I
right?
think that says a lot
What
of
it
a
looks
person
like,
as
what
a
these
servant,
struggles look like in our lives.
you know, expecting
And I
it,
think,
or if you're too eager
look
to
at me,
accept
look at me,
the
how great I
recognition,
am.
I think
Well,
it's
look at
kind of like,
our society.
you know,
Look at
people
Facebook,
notice
Instagram,
that, and
Snapchat.
it's like,
Very
You
true.
put, you do
were they-
something,
was-
whether it's
You're
was there
or
a
you
moment
doing something for somebody, everybody gets to
Yeah,
see it.
so it's like, it's
And
not just
whether or not they
doing
want to, right? It's,
the
look at
acts,
me.
it's
You know,
actually
it's a
having the
temptation of
attitude.
Like the why.
doing it all over again, and I think it's even easier for us to do it.
Because people
than
can,
this
like you said, people can
that
see, like you know when you see like a prideful person, you're like,
Yeah.
wow, you're just doing.
All right, let's bring it back real quick. Yeah, thank you for your discussion. Just one person from each group again. Just kind of sharing a quick thought. These are great discussions. I'm really enjoying being a part of them. But one person, real quick. Anybody volunteer? Yeah, that'd be great.
okay, I think, so as our group talked about, as you do something, as you serve,
Right.
a lot of times it's hard to serve but not expect maybe recognition. So if you put in a lot of work towards something, not that you want to be praised
Yeah.
on a high level, and maybe you kind of tell yourself, well, I'm not asking for praise, I just want to be recognized.
Mhm.
And I think that that's maybe a close correlation to looking for praise in your leadership or in your service and
Yeah.
trying to take that as leadership. And also, we talked about with today's society, we have Facebook and Instagram. Everything you do, it's look at me, like I'm going on vacation, or look at me, like I help these people out.
Right.
And
That's the
everything
big
you do is
Yeah.
put out for everybody to see. So I think as we apply this lesson to our lives, we need to think about like social media and how easy that makes it for us to do this. And how we should serve them, as well as just service is always followed by leadership, or creates followers, and not allowing it as we start to serve, and we
Right.
begin by serving because we love, we want to serve, and then as we create followers, turning that into leadership and then changing our path.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the three things we touched on.
That's awesome. Great thought.
Yeah, our group, Ashley said a cool thing too. She was talking about how when you see somebody doing service, acts of
Yeah.
service, you can tell when their heart is in the right place. If you are, seeing them in the public doing that, you can tell when you have a prideful person with a motive to get recognized, versus somebody who's doing it from the heart. And
Right.
so, we were talking about the difference between that as well as the verse 5 that says everything they do is done for people to see.
Yeah.
How we're talking about the people in our society who aren't being noticed
Right.
are being are having servants for themselves. They're not the servants themselves. So,
That's
interesting.
good. Awesome thoughts, guys. Keep that train of thought going. As we move on to the next example, I'll read this one. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead," this is the good part, "whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life ransom for many." Yeah, that's just a great verse. I mean, just be that's servant leadership right there. And I want you guys to discuss this idea of this line, verse 44. Whoever wants to be the first must be slave of all. Again, this term of slave has this negative connotation. And what does Jesus mean by being the slave of all? And how does that tie into servant leadership? So again, just a quick discussion between groups, and then we'll come back together.
You just think about what a slave does. They just do work and they don't get noticed for it. You know, maybe you take the Egyptians, you know, who were enslaved for 400 years. You know, you take them and they built all these amazing things. And who gets all the credit? The Egyptian gods, the rulers of Egypt. You know, no one looks at the slaves and says, "Oh, you did a great job." You know, and so if you want to be first, like it's saying, like, you know, you have to be a slave. You have to accept the fact that you're not going to get any recognition, and one, be completely okay with it. Two, you know, just know that you're not doing this for praise. You're not doing this to gain morality, gain anything like that. You're not looking to gain anything. You're looking to lose people to gain all this very work.
Yeah.
And I think correlating
What do you guys think?
servant leadership and
I mean, yeah, it's just weird that, I mean, it's,
I guess
yeah, it was
that's
written
the same thing as
way
your
back
spiritual
when, and they
side
just
of
used that type of language, but it's,
your job.
yeah, just
Yeah.
in our
Your life.
context of slave, especially what happened, you know, in the past, but it's like, yeah, what, that's just a funny way to say being a servant.
It's like the lowest rung.
Yeah, yeah, and it's okay to be that, it's like being called to be that, just accepting that is
And there
sometimes
should be
hard.
that balance, you know, of like, yes, putting yourself lowest and making sure that, yeah, you are a slave to all, you're helping others, and, but also having the balance of taking care of yourself too, and not being selfish about it, and having that balance, because God wants us to also, you know, take care of ourselves as well. So there's like that fine line where it's like, it's just,
That's what I think is cool, because it's like, we're supposed to be the lowest of low, but then he's like, surround yourself in a community, in a Christ-like community with, followers and disciples that builds you up. You know, so it's like, yeah, exactly, so we're having that mindset of serving others in the lowest low, but then we're getting built up by our families, by the friends that are around us, by the community, so just an interesting,
You're totally right, because he
God
didn't come.
covers it all,
to the world.
He covers all bases, He doesn't
Yeah.
leave anything unturned.
And then we did, this is right after the other portion,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, it's contradicting this
I
Bible
think it's
context.
interesting
Kind of,
Yeah.
to talk about,
Yeah.
well, how it says it must be.
It's context.
And it's not,
Yeah.
a lot of people think they can just educate themselves or
Yeah.
make themselves aware
Separate
or
words.
observe, but that's not what it's
Tricky.
saying.
Is it
It's,
funny?
you know, you
You're
put
good.
yourself.
All right, let's bring it back. Just one person from each group, just a quick, what you guys talked about, and yeah, I know we had a pretty good discussion about just being the slave of all and just being the lowest of low, and how we're called to be that. It's okay to be that, but then how we have a community around us, a Christian community of followers and disciples that build us up. They just got to cover everything with not leaving anything unturned. So, anybody have anything else to add on that?
Well, reading this, the conflict that I had was in verse 43 and 44, where it brings up great and slave is prefaced by whoever wants to become. Sorry, servants and slave is prefaced by whoever wants to become great and whoever wants to be first. So it kind of states that the motive for our service could be the act of becoming great. So that's a little conflict I had. And then at 45, it doesn't reference anything about being great or being first.
Right.
It's just what Jesus did. He came to serve, and that's it. So that was just a conflict I have. What is this advice to do if we want to be servants? Do we want to have to become great? But then Sarah helped bring up a good comment that Jesus knows the human condition. He knows the free will. He knows that a lot of our motivation could become great. And then I just realized that the word is want. So if you want to become great, this is how you do it. Not everyone wants to become great. Not everyone wants to be first. And it's just a conflict I have in reading that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for being honest. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Any group back here?
yeah, I think that we were kind of touching on what you were saying earlier, just in regards to being a slave and how you have to kind of have that balance of, yes, being a servant, but also surrounding yourself in that community to build you up, because that can be so draining to just constantly serve and then not have anything to fill you up, which is why our church community is so important.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys again for your input and discussion. One more. Can I have one person volunteer for just to read this real quick, and then yeah, we're going to discuss it, and then we'll have an activity that we're going to go into. But
I don't know.
go for it.
A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves."
That's good. What sticks out to me is just this: the greatest among you should be like the youngest. And I feel like a lot of us have just this idea that, I mean, younger people don't know what they're talking about, or they're not as valuable as an adult. But I mean, Christ throughout the scriptures said, "Have faith like a child," and just as a whole aspect of servant leadership, and how can we, in that perspective of being the youngest, help us in serving others and in having faith like a child, in that innocence. And so just kind of discuss that in your groups, and we can bring it back in about 5 minutes.
Well, I think that, at least back then, it's kind of like dwindling down now, but like when children, were being taught back then, it was, always to be served, to, like, the women were taught, younger women were taught to bring food to, like, serve, and the men were also taught to serve as well. And, they don't know anything better. They don't know how to, oh, do this for me, do this for me. They don't learn that at that age. Probably now we do, but back then I don't think that they had much of a, rebellious
I took
spirit
it
in the sense that they're being taught to
just
be,
because
servants and like
I was
serve.
thinking of the innocence of child
They
and
don't have
faith like a
a rebellious
child.
sense like, well, no, I want to like lead. I
and
want
almost
you do
how,
this for me. It's they're
as
always being
a
taught
child myself, I
to
didn't
be
really
a servant to people.
like ask many
So I guess that was
questions.
intentional.
I just I believed. I saw like the creation, and I saw all of the things, and in the Bible lessons as a child, I feel like it
The
came
last
more
verse is
naturally to
interesting
believe.
too,
But as you
just
grow
the-
older, that's when you start to kind of ask questions. Why?
Yeah,
Like,
so it's
why
greater
does
than
that
the table
happen?
and
And
the one who is
I think that's a growing process as we grow.
So I was kind of
into
thrown
mature
off on
adults.
this. I guess
But
I was just a little
as a
confused
child,
by that,
it
but
just
I think
your faith
it's supposed to be kind of the
becomes-
table.
I don't know if easy is the right word.
Trying to
but
figure
So,
that
I
verse
think it was-
out.
I think of the youngest.
What
I think about
I took
how
that verse to be,
Jesus referring to the youngest. They are
like the master,
be like the youngest.
who's always sitting at
When
the
I was a
table,
kid,
waiting
church
to
was
be
like,
served.
I
I studied
And
I learned it, and I
the
could believe
master,
these stories.
Right.
And as I got
even in
older, I
our
remember
society
reading,
today,
like,
is seen
children
as the
going,
greater
why
one.
are we Christians?
And
It's
so
Christian because
I
we grew
think
up this
it's
way.
one of
Like,
those
I remember saying that
conflicting
to me,
questions,
Pastor.
you
Yeah.
know,
Never
for
since
who
then.
is greater,
And
the
it
one
was
who
point
sits
of
at the
life,
table or the one who
you get all
serves?
your right and
Oh, because of
Is
what's
it
the
not
society
the one who
says.
is at the table,
and your
but
decisions
I am
are
among
made.
you as the one who
And
serves?
you,
So Jesus
patience
reminding
or
us
whatever
that
it is in your life that gets in the way
Yeah.
of that.
don't
Whereas
forget to
kids,
be the one who
just what it
serves.
is,
Don't
right?
just always
Yeah.
go
And
and
I think
sit
of like that point
at the
in my
table
life,
waiting
and
to be
that's
served.
what,
Like I think about my
I
grandfather,
think it's just referring to
and
kids.
you know, when
It's
he was
easy for them
alive,
to
he
just
was one
believe
that was
it,
like
yeah.
6
Because
o'clock
that's all they know.
every night.
Just like
He
his
just
dog.
sat at the table
All
waiting
his
for
dog
my
knows
grandma
is
to
to listen
bring
to
him
his
his
owner.
food. And it wasn't
Just
that he
having
saw
faith
my
like a
grandma
child
as a
is like-
servant,
Children
but
are like
that
this,
was
okay,
just
like, God would
routine.
tell me to do
yeah.
it. My
And
parents say
the
that
men
God
back
did
at
this,
that
do it.
time were
I mean,
that
yeah,
was their
the
place.
idea of
They would be
God
the
calls
hard
us to
workers. They
serve
come
leadership,
sit
so
at
we
the
should
table,
just
wait for
blindly
the
follow
woman to come
and believe
and
And as adults,
know that that's
kind
the
of thing.
best
But I
way.
think
As
within a
adults,
Christian
they stress on
context,
life
I
and
think
get
it's
anxious.
wanting us to
you go,
think
whoa,
more.
okay, God, but like, I got bills to pay.
Yeah.
I got this to do.
Don't be so
This-
focused on
No,
yourself
sir,
and
just do
just
that,
like
you'll be fine. Just
expecting others to
listen.
do the
And I
things
think
for you,
a child would do
but
that,
be
whereas
among the ones who
children listen
are
to their
looking to
parents.
serve.
And we're adults and we think, God's not actually our father, you know, we don't
What
listen to him
about
like
the
our
youngest
kids.
aunt?
Yeah.
who
Yeah,
listens
that
to
first,
his
that
stuff?
first verse,
What do you think
we have
about
brought up the question, what calls someone to want to serve?
Yeah, because that's an interesting statement.
How does that
The
process
greatest
even
among
happen?
you
Yeah.
should be like the
We should have
youngest,
faith like
Like
the one who rules like
just
the one who
listen,
serves.
so God calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back real quick. Again, one last time, just kind of share one person from each group. Heard some great thoughts over here. I'm sure you guys had a great discussion as well. But just for the class, just be able to share one quick thought on this passage. Any brave volunteers?
Well, I think, you know, there was a very conflicting question there in verse 27,
Yeah.
where for who is greater, the one that sits at the table or the one who serves? And so we were kind of discussing what, you know, well, the person that's at the table, who are they? You know, are we to be, you know, what does it mean to be, just be at the table?
Yeah.
And so we kind of broke that down into, you know, there has always been the master and the servant. And so the master being the person that's at the table waiting to be served. But, you know, in the second part of that, it says, is it not the one who is at the table, but I am among you as one who serves. So remembering, you know, don't just wait for someone else to do something for you.
Yeah.
Be the first one, or not even the first one, but just be mindful of like serving others and not just waiting.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. Guys.
In the 26th verse, when you first read it, I questioned the youngest, and I was like, what does that even mean? And I'm glad you brought it up, our wonderful teacher and fellow learner, because you mentioned faith like a child, and that helped start my thought process of we are called to have faith like children, and just we listen to our parents, we listen to our elders, we respect them, and we follow what they do because that's what kids do.
Yeah.
And that's what God is calling us to do, is to be like the youngest, be like the children. And then I realized it kind of correlated to the question I had in the first scripture of like, or like the video of like Mother Teresa, like what called her to serve? And then what brings up in someone to say, I'm just going to serve and that's what I'm going to be. So there's a good correlation between these two verses because God's just calling us to be like the youngest, just listen, and we should just listen by serving. So that kind of helped to
Just
answer your question.
believing. Yeah.
He calls us to be like, live like a child or have faith like a child, and that since he calls us to be a servant leader, we should just listen and do it.
That's awesome. That's great. Any last thoughts on that? That was awesome.
I got another thought. So looking at verse 27, and I just kind of thought of this when Michelle started speaking, but when we look at, okay, who is at the table and who's serving, who's greater, you know, I think of, okay, you're a waiter at the table, or you're sitting at a table, somebody's bringing you food. You know, that's a service, right? And when you think about times like this, if you're sitting at a table being served, you're probably royalty. But when I think of, I guess in our conversation, I thought of his dog. So when you have a dog, you're literally, you're their master, right?
Right.
And you master over them, but you also feed that dog. So
That's
you're bringing that dog food
Yeah.
as if they're sitting at a table,
Right.
but but just because you're feeding them and you're serving them by feeding them, you're still their master, and they couldn't really get food without you. And so, and that dog listens to him, and listens to everything he does, like faith, like a child. But I think having a dog is kind of a good image of what we should be like in our society. Is I'm serving you by giving you food, but I may even be your master, right?
That's good. It's a really good picture. Thank you. Oh, that's great. So that's great.
Back here too,
So to kind of wrap our time up together, we're gonna do a quick activity. I gave each one of you 3x5 cards, and on those we're gonna be writing 3 key lessons that we've learned about servant leadership from these 3 passages. And I can flip through. I can go back and flip through the passages to remind you guys. But this is for you guys. I mean, this is for the application piece of being able to put together everything that we've talked about, all the great analogies and stories, but just write down 3 main things that you can walk away with coming out of this lesson and refer back to. And so these things are for you guys, keep in your pockets at work or wherever. So 3 main lessons that you want to write down. We're going to take about 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk groups and again to share those. So go ahead and write those down, and we'll come back in about 3 to 5 minutes. Does anyone need me to flip back at all, or are you guys okay?
We're good.
Okay. And be thinking about, again, your immediate context. So, I mean, a situation at work, you're a leader of a team. Just be thinking, I mean, how can I best be using these skills from Christ's leadership and apply them to my immediate situation? So, the next day, so tomorrow, how can I be applying these things? Yeah. As we're finishing up, I mean, again, this idea of like sticking the 3x5 card in your pocket, and even if you're not even looking at it, but just that feeling of something in that back pocket, or it just kind of takes your mind there, that perspective of that remindance of that's all we need sometimes. We're having a conversation with someone, or we're in a situation, and you put your fingers back in your back pocket, and you're like, oh. And I have to serve, and just that little reminder of hopefully this can be something that you guys take in your jobs and careers, and I mean the rest of your life. And so again, just immediately just apply these 3 things overall. So are we pretty much done? Okay, so one last time, just turn to your group, be able to share these. And some of these things we've already talked about, but just to reiterate as we go away from tonight. And just encourage them on it if you can. Just these are great things to be able to continue doing in our workplace and our environments that we're at. So go ahead, we'll bring it back in like 5 minutes. We'll conclude. Thank you guys.
My first point, the way up is down, and I know we talked about it earlier, but something that caught my attention this time was, when you think about it, you go down in prayer to knees, or down is up. And, I didn't think about that earlier, but I know that was the whole aspect of it. And just being, a servant, humbling yourself, and God will lift you from time in His time.
Get rewarded.
That's my job, and I was telling Michelle I'm doing customer service right now against my will. And so I'm constantly serving people all day, and it can be just really draining, and you know, I can end up having a really bad attitude with these people. And so I think that I can learn to be a servant leader by serving them joyfully, even when it seems unfair, because that's how Jesus was a server, and that's how he was a servant leader, is by showing other people in my workplace when I'm being treated badly, that I'm treating them with grace and dignity. So that's gonna be hard, but it'll be a good day, right?
Being necessarily okay without being recognized, I put that one
I
down, just like remember to
have
serve without
served with pure
seeking
and humble heart.
that type of
and
recognition,
Just
or
allow
even
God
if
to
it's just,
expand and develop
you
their
know,
sphere of
appreciation.
appreciation.
Just to do
Just
it
not
without
looking for that
expecting
praise,
anything, because that's
but
when
just looking
that act of
for
service is really glorifying,
a-
you know.
an opportunity
God.
for the Lord to be
I think that was probably the biggest one.
I think
a
if you
greater
go out and find
influence
something
in
really
what I
awesome
do.
for somebody, and then you get mad because they don't say thank you.
I feel like there is no service without
You didn't get
servants.
anything.
I think it's just more
really filling you up.
The
Yes,
mindset
exactly.
of everyone,
You're getting mad because
is,
somebody didn't
you know, focused on
say, oh,
themselves.
thank you.
Yeah, just like to be a servant, in like serving you when you're being difficult, or like vice versa, and when I'm being difficult for me, and showing that's such a witness to me, you know, like if I'm being really difficult with him and he's being a sweetheart and just really trying to, you know, serve me at that time, then realizing that later, I think can really be a witness to each other, and that for anybody really, a friendship even, so having that grace is,
Where's the fault, and where is there fault in
I think being a servant requires getting dirty,
totally.
and I think
Is that what you wrote?
no,
Get dirty.
but you know,
Yeah.
it really is. It's not always a pretty job.
Interesting.
There has to be someone willing to go there.
All right, let's bring it back. Having a conversation over here, and one great question that was raised. Would you ask that out loud to the class?
Not that this pertains to my marriage, but I'm recently married. And it's just, marriage is all about service, and I serve my wife, and my wife serves me. And where does it come, say like I serve my wife for years, and she doesn't recognize it, and she doesn't show gratification for that. And then and me longing, like I'm just gonna keep serving because that's what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not getting recognition. Like, we're not supposed to serve for recognition, but am I at fault for wanting recognition after years of service, or is she at fault for not recognizing my service? You know, so marriage is all about, it's beautiful. It's just a question that I kind of,
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of relationships struggle with that. Does anybody have any opinions or thoughts on that topic?
Well, I think you said it earlier, Kurt, in that, you know, God knows the human condition, and it is, you know, all about free will. But I think that's where, as Christians, you know, that's when we pray for the others.
Yeah.
In that, you know, there's a heart change, and I mean, even not being married, I think we deal with that even in friendships, you know, where we give, and don't always get back, and it gets draining.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and at the same time, you know, like God's, you know, he served us, you know, he gave his ultimate sacrifice for us, and do we, you know, give him enough gratification? Do we give him any gratification,
Yeah.
if any? And yet he still continues to serve us.
Yeah.
Without any ask or want of our gratification.
I think that gets into the different loves, like so.
Agape.
The agape, so the sacrifice, the sacrificial love, and especially in a marriage, that there's probably this type of love that maybe, friendships, because there's different types of love, and so in that particular scenario, maybe it's almost simpler for us to continue to serve, but because we love that person so much, then it's fulfilling to us as well.
Right.
And there doesn't need to be any receiving on your end, because I don't, but I'm not married, so I don't.
That's great. No, that's great. Anybody have anything else to add on that? Okay. That's awesome. Thank you for asking that question. And I just want to thank you all so much for your participation tonight and during this lesson. And it's been awesome just to be able to walk around and hear different perspectives and thoughts on servant leadership and analogies like you just gave and questions. And I just see the wheels turning, which is awesome. And that's my prayer and hope as you guys leave tonight and go to your certain situations or environments and jobs. It's that these wheels don't stop. It's the continual progression. It's a continual journey of, we're never going to be experts on this stuff. It's, continuing to, keep that 3x5 card in the back pocket and continuing to remind ourselves of these lessons and remind ourselves to serve, to be the lowest of low, to be the slave sometimes, to, all of Jesus' examples, like, again, he was the best of the best, and just to be able to look back and encourage others around us, and all these things that we've talked about tonight. So just thank you so much, really appreciate it, and look forward to learning with you guys in the future.